Okay, this is lesson number 5.6, and this is more of an explanation of what you've already learned. You have already done 90% of the work to understand this lesson. The point of this video is for you to sort of make click what you've already learned, if you haven't figured it out already. I've called this section connecting the dots, right? So I want you to think exactly in that manner. You've learned all 5 shapes of the major scale. I want you to try and see how these connect. So in this video, we'll use the key of G as the example. So what are the 5 shapes in G major, right? You've learned that already? You learned that already? Again, you know it? You know that too? You know it? And then it just repeats itself. You've learned basically this. You have learned the major scale on the guitar. This is how you play the major scale. If you look at this diagram, that would be really hard to learn by itself, right? It would take a long time to sit there and try to memorize. It would take you forever. It's too much information. You've already cut this up into 5 pieces, 5 positions, based upon what we've already learned, the 1st to the 5th shapes. What you need to understand now is how and why these connect. So I want you to look at your fretboard. Every guitar is different, but one thing they all have in common is that every guitar has at least 12 frets, right? My guitar has 24 frets. Yours might have 20, 21, 22 is very common. But either way, you have at least 12. Why 12? Well, if you look at this diagram, that huge scale on the average guitar neck fits within 12 frets. Those 5 shapes that you've already learned fit perfectly in an area of 12 frets. Doesn't matter what key, this example is G. But if it's A, C sharp, doesn't matter. Within 12 frets, the cycle starts again. with the next 12 frets. It's a repeating cycle. As I said, most guitars have at least 12 frets. Mine has 24. So because I have 24, I can play these 5 shapes twice. 5 here and 5 here. None of these exist, but if somebody had a 36 fret guitar, they could play these 5 shapes 3 times. One in the lower 12, the middle 12, and the highest 12. Doesn't exist. If it's the same if someone had a 144 fret guitar, they could play these 5 shapes repeating 12 times. 12 times 12 is 144. So that's important for you to understand if you don't already. You are able to play the major scale with what's given to you. What's given to us as guitarists are at least 12 frets, but usually 20, 22, something like that. So we can play the same thing in more or less 2 different registers, okay? That's important to know. The next part that I want to share with you is that yes, we've learned 5 shapes, and yes, these 5 shapes you will see them in other videos called the caged system. These are the most important shapes. There's no doubt about it. But there are 2 other shapes that are sort of in between kind of shapes. I don't want to say cheating shapes, but they exist, and you can, if you want to, think of them as their own shape. I do personally. So let me show you what I mean, and you can decide for yourself if you want to think of them as 2 additional shapes to learn, or if they're kind of like in between shapes. So the first one that's kind of hidden, let's again go back to the key of G, and let's play the G major scale as we learned. I think we call this the first shape, right? And then the next shape, we have to go up here. Now, your hand is kind of making not a big jump, but it's moving quite a bit. If you want to sort of stretch and kind of get both of these shapes into one, you can do it. It's very doable, and it looks something like this. You can get both of those shapes in there with this sort of bonus shape. So have a look at that. You can kind of see how it fits in between. You get the same 3 root notes as the first shape, and you get sort of the lower half of the second shape in there also. So that's sort of an in-between shape. There is another one that is hidden, and that's between the, I believe it was the 4th and 5th shapes that we learned, right? So working in the key of G, we learned the 4th shape as such. And then the next shape we learned was the 5th one. Now this one, more so than the last one, they're kind of far apart from each other. It's a little bit of a shift, a jump between these 2. So there's this in-between one that you can use that looks sort of like this. So you can, personally, I like this shape the most. I use this a lot. For me, it's comfortable. It's more symmetrical. With this one, you can kind of by putting this shape in between those two, you can kind of go forward or backward with minimal effort and cover more ground. So if you want to, you can learn these two additional shapes, but you don't have to. It's not necessary. The original 5 that we learned, those are, and those we will explain more clearly in the next video as the caged system. Those are called the caged chords, and there's tons of videos about this. I will try to explain it in a slightly different way. So for now, that's all. See you next time.